Greetings, everyone, and welcome to a very special online event today called Dancing with Your Feminine Fire. Activate your primal powers with goddesses Pele, Kali, and Isis. Very exciting theme today, and we get to go into this realm, very important realm, not only individually, but for our collective right now, of feminine fire with a remarkable soul. And I have a special bias for this person, but she's also very remarkable in her own right. Her name is Devaa Haley Mitchell. She's my beloved wife, and she's also a reverend doctor. She's the co-founder of the Shift Network. She's the founder of the Inspiring Women Summit. She's created a nonprofit called the Full Circle Fund, and she's served as in both business capacities and spiritual capacities, particularly as a midwife to female leaders, helping them to step into more of their power and really reclaim some of these energies that have often been marginalized or suppressed as part of the last few hundred years. So what a delight and pleasure it is to bring you on the call today, Devaa.
Thank you, Stephen. It's really fun to be here, and this is a topic I am super fired up about. So we're in store for a good call.
Great. Well, we're going to have this hour with Devaa, and I want to let you know right up front, we're going to have a chance to go much deeper in a brand new program called the Feminine Fire Empowerment. And we're doing this program because we recognize just how important it is right now to rebalance our collective. We need women to stand in more and more of their power, and ultimately accessing this feminine fire is central to that. And so there's a lot of benefits in your life, and we're going to have a full 7-week program about it. So we'll share a little bit more about that towards the end today. But Devaa, let's start with a little bit of your backstory. So maybe on a personal level, how was it that you went about reclaiming your own feminine fire, and why has that been so central to your path?
So on a personal level, I think I am someone like many women out there who has been very much conditioned by my society and by culture around me. And so in my earlier years, I wasn't always as comfortable really stepping out, really sharing my truth. I think I often would say what I thought people wanted to hear or what I felt was appropriate to the situation. And as I've gotten older and as I have been called more to step into leadership, I have felt that it's been central to really cultivate these aspects of the feminine, what we're calling these more fiery aspects, to be the leader that I want to be, so that I am comfortable with my voice, even when it's not popular, so that I am comfortable setting boundaries. I think that saying no is something that for many women is really a challenge. I know this because I work with so many women, and actually just did a whole workshop on this for women in South America. Being clear, saying no, setting boundaries, and being a bit more fierce. I think most of us have been trained, as I said, I was, to be kind, to be polite, to be gentle. And there's a quote that's out there right now that I have been loving, and it's that well-behaved women seldom make history. And this was written a while ago, but I feel like right now, this is the moment when we see women who are not behaving, but are really making a big difference. And I think all of us getting comfortable with those sorts of energies is really the call of our day. Not that we cast out the softer feminine energies, the more yin flavor of the feminine, but to really integrate it into this package, this full spectrum feminine, so that we can really be all of who we are, give our deepest gifts, and also have the inner fortitude to be bold, be strong, be courageous, even be assertive when it's appropriate and necessary. So that's a little of the terrain that we're headed into today.
So I'd love for you to share a little bit more about what are the different dimensions of feminine fire. And so you talked a little bit boldness and courageousness, but also there's a sensuality as well. So there's like this kind of this more full, in the East they call it Shaktis, like opening the portal to like more life force energy. And how does that really live in a feminine body?
Yeah, I love the archetype of Shakti and Pele. That's one of the goddesses we'll be talking about during this call in more depth, is one of the embodiments of that, what we call the primal goddess. So the primal goddess is one who is connecting us to our instinctual nature. And part of our instinctual nature is also our sensuality and our sexuality. But really, it's our life force, and it can be expressed in so many different ways. And so as we connect in with a primal goddess, which is just this energy that's the core of who we are, it releases this vitality and energy and creativity. It's a fuel, really, for our life, and it can be expressed in many different ways. Some of us choose to express it in more sensual and sexual ways, especially as our passions flow with our intimate partners. But that same life force energy, it's like the energy. Pele is the volcano goddess of Hawaii. So that primal hot fire that is just energy moving, that is literally, creating earth out of molten lava, can be accessed as well. And it gives us this energy, but this flow and a sense of aliveness and vitality and fire, which I know for myself as a woman, now in my mid 40s, and for all of us as we're aging, it's really important to be able to tap into that fire, and especially the archetypal fire, because our own fire is not always as strong. There's things we can do to fortify it, and we'll be doing a practice today that's designed to bring us more deeply into that fire energy. But it's really helps us keep that vitality and aliveness and passion for life.
So I'd love for you to share a little bit about why you think right now there's been a lot of suppression of this fire and a need to reclaim it, particularly in our culture. It's sort of, there's a lot of heat now with Me Too movement, and there's a rising up of the feminine. And so just share a little bit more about what is the relationship between the feminine fire and the shift in our larger culture right now.
Yeah, I think it's important that we talk a bit about the larger context that we're living inside of as women right now. It's a really interesting moment, but it's also a challenging moment as well. When we look around at the statistics for women right now, women, at least in the developing countries, are definitely outpacing men in terms of education. I know here in the United States, I saw a stat recently that said 56% of the college students are women, and yet we are still earning less, an average of 15% less. And so there's these ways that we're stepping into power. We're getting very educated, but we're still poorly represented in politics. We still don't have that many positions of power in the workplace. We are holding those women who are holding some of the most important positions of power often don't even feel the inner sense of confidence that they truly earned the right to be there. There's a book that came out a few years ago that maybe some of you saw that was called The Confidence Code. And in interviewing some of these more powerful women, including news anchors and different things, most of these women felt like they were there kind of by luck or by happenstance or by chance. And so there's this sense of, we're well educated. We even are stepping into many more positions of power, but there's an internal feeling that we don't necessarily deserve to be there. There's also this external landscape of women starting many businesses, in fact, faster than men, 1.5 times as many entrepreneurial businesses here in the United States are being started by women. But in a conversation with my colleague, Sage Levine, who just wrote a book called Women Rocking Business, she was saying that women-led businesses are also failing a lot faster than men's. And the context of why that's happening is because women are really overstretched, often trying to conquer the world and be in alignment with their deepest passions. At the same time, they've also are the caretakers who are caretaking their families, their communities. And then when that reality is coupled with living inside of many more masculine paradigms of success, that landscape hasn't created the space where women are really succeeding. And so it's this challenging moment. And yet there's also, so much excitement happening. I don't know how many people watched the Oscars that happened recently, but I was really inspired to see how many people again, a minority, but much more than in the past, that were really using the podium as an opportunity for activism. And they were not necessarily behaving according to the Oscar norms, but they were using that position of power and that spotlight to highlight other women, to talk about the Me Too movement and the Time's Up movement. And so many more women are feeling, and we're seeing women stepping into these bold positions, including in films. I just wrote a longer blog article on what I'm calling the fierce feminine. And I was really looking at women in films and some of the heroine figures that are popping up now. There was Wonder Woman recently, who is a very fiery woman, though, some would say she was also still, wearing a short skirt and somewhat objectified in certain ways. She was also very strong and fiery. Or when you look at Hidden Figures, the beautiful movie about the African-American women in the NASA organization and them really disrupting the old boys network and the power structures. And so we're seeing these images popping up everywhere, which is so exciting. And at the same time, women in their own lives are not necessarily trained to feel comfortable being that bold or misbehaving. And I think part of the reason for that is because women, we are really social creatures, and there is not only the external barriers and the glass ceiling that we've been hearing about for so many years, but there's these internal barriers where we are looking around often at what is acceptable, what is permissible, what is everyone else doing, and kind of equilibrating with that. And so we are needing to grow new capacities inside of ourselves to be willing to get a little outside of our normal comfort zone. And that's why the course that you mentioned earlier, Stephen, I'm really excited about, because I feel like having a living laboratory where we can really be a community of support for each other, but also really practice saying no, practice setting boundaries, practice those hard conversations that we might not feel comfortable having, where we know what we have to say may not be popular, but it's our truth and it's what needs to be said. And so there's this context that I feel like is very exciting. And if we can create spaces where the norms are different, where there's a norm of permission to be bold, permission to be fiery, permission to, color outside the lines, then I think that really creates a whole different context where we can allow this fire that is inherent in who we are to come forward and to fuel our visions, our projects, but also to create a space where we're really living the full potential of the feminine.
The title of today is about dancing with your feminine fire. I'd love for you to share a little bit more about how the way of moving with his energy is different than the kind of boldness or courage. Like when we say boldness or courage, oftentimes we have a masculine overlay. And I know that you've also been really a champion for reclaiming a more full spectrum approach to the feminine. So you're in a way, you're marrying a lot of those deeper, gentler, tender, or more vulnerable parts with this kind of boldness at the same time. Let's just share a little bit more about that.
Well, it's interesting as you talk about the word dancing. I know that as I start talking about these fire energies, what starts happening inside my own body is I feel movement starting to happen. And I don't think you can't see my full body here, but in my hips, I feel like a figure eight energy. So there's a fire and there's a flow. And so the feminine is a lot about curves, whereas the masculine is a lot about lines. I gave a talk that was called Curving the Lines. And so it's this, the Kundalini often moves up the spine in this undular fashion. So if you can even do this with me, you're just imagining you're doing these figure eights in your chair, and the fire is burning, but it's got a different kind of quality. It's like a filling up of our temple, a filling up of our belly. And so it's alive, it's vital, it's vibrant, but it's also still has this feminine flow. So it's a fire that is, as I said, this creative flowing fire, as opposed to something that might be a little more jagged or out there in a more masculine kind of way.
And more sensual as well, right?
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of sensual. And I think as we allow this fire to ignite in our body and our beings, when people think of sensual energy, there's a lot of expectation that it's around, being in an intimate partner and the sexual expression of that energy. But I think the part that is often not as talked about is how much that energy can just fuel us, can fuel our own hearts, our own bellies, and our own yearnings. So the part of us that has perhaps looked for someone else to share that energy with so we can feel fully alive, there's another place where we can bring that energy back into ourselves, and it fills us back up. It helps fill our cup in a way so that we're kind of self-regenerating, which I also think is a really exciting possibility.
Cool. Well, there's a lot we can go into, but let's target the actual goddesses we're going to focus in on today. So let's maybe provide a little context up front, like why this work with archetypes can be so powerful. A lot of people haven't worked in a kind of an archetypal way, which is a different and often deeper way of working than just more meditation or visualization kind of practices.
Yeah, thanks for asking that. And so let me just first mention, not everyone is even familiar with archetypes. I know when I first heard that word, it sounded so foreign and so kind of out there. I couldn't originally see how it was relevant to my life. But I think archetypes are easiest when we use some examples. So an archetype, a fiery archetype would be the archetype of the wild woman, that woman who is, I often think of, running naked through the hilltops and howling with the wolves. That beautiful book that was by Clarissa Pinkola Estes, Women Who Run with the Wolves. It was a whole embodiment of one archetype, the wild woman. But there's also the queen. There's also the princess. There is the muse. There is the mother. So many, and so basically, as we work with an archetype, it gives you an opportunity to plug into an energy stream that's really cross-cultural, that is much larger than yourself. And so it gives you the opportunity to kind of live into a more mythic aspect of yourself, kind of living bigger, bolder. And also there's energy that flows with these archetypes. So as opposed to your own personal life and your own personal story, you're able to plug into this much larger matrix, especially as we're working with, there's the archetype. So for example, the primal goddess is one archetype that we work with in the lineage I've been trained in, which is the 13 Moon Mystery School lineage, which is Celtic roots, Avalon-based lineage. But and then there's different embodiments of that archetype in different traditions. So Pele is one example of that primal goddess archetype. That's from the Hawaiian tradition. As I mentioned, the volcano goddess. And I had the opportunity to go and with you, Stephen, together, we've gone to the lava a few different times when we've been in Hawaii, and sitting there and feeling that primal energy force. And you can feel where as you plug in, and I remember meditating there and opening to that energy field, again, so much larger than myself. And so as I'm wanting to make changes in my life or access my passion, my creativity, and I open to that energy, it fuels me in such a larger way than just my own personal life. And so it can be really helpful. And it's almost like when you're a kid and you were playing dress up, and somehow, putting on some outfit or costume, even on Halloween, gives us permission to live into this different side of ourselves that may not match up with our everyday persona. In the same way, when we step into an archetypal energy, either embodying it in ourselves and really inviting that archetype to fully live through us, or also, externally doing deity practice. For those of you that are interested in that kind of work, that's another way that you can interface with these actual beings that exist in different dimensions and invite them to be working with you and fueling you in different ways. So it is, as you said, Stephen, a different way of working. In our mystery school and in the course that I'll be offering as well, I'm really going to be inviting the people in the program, the women in the program primarily, to learn how to embody these energies yourself. Because that, as you do that, first you start off as the archetype, but as you get much more comfortable embodying that archetype, it begins to bleed over into your everyday life. So the things that you start working with on an archetypal level, then you then become more comfortable with as part of who you are in your daily life. And I find that it's a much faster way to open up energies and to move. And there's also often deep healing that happens, because as we're stepping into each aspect, there's usually some shadow material, the sexual, primal, creative aspect. There can also be, for example, a lot of shame connected to bringing that energy forward. We've not always been celebrated in that energy. And so there's also usually a clearing of some of the baggage that goes along with these different aspects of self that are really asking to come into wholeness at this time.
That's a great explanation. Well, why don't we dive into Pele first?
Okay, well, we've already been talking about Pele a little bit, but I feel like one of the best ways is to just do some embodiment work together. So if you are in a safe place, I am going to invite you to close your eyes. And you can begin by just breathing in the color frequency of orange. You can imagine a vibrant orange, like the color of the cloth, the altar cloth behind me. Orange and kind of fire colors. And imagine that you're just breathing those right into your belly. And as you do, choosing a word that feels connected to this energy for you. You could choose one of the words we've already been talking about. Could be fire, could be passion, could be sensuality, could be boldness, could be creativity. Whatever word that feels connected with this fire energy that you would really like to have more of in your life. Imagine you're bringing that in as you're bringing in this color orange fire. And now I want to invite you to briefly imagine that you are a large jungle cat. You can choose, it could be a lioness or a panther or jaguar or some other large cat, but just imagine yourself actually being in the jungle and moving with this stealthy energy and with this primal passion pulsing through your veins. And you could just imagine what the earth would feel like beneath your feet. And as you're moving through the jungle, you can imagine that you're moving through the trees and the bushes, and you're letting it kind of scrape against your body. And you're just allowing this primal energy, this orange fiery energy, to move through you. So if it's not already moving through your legs, inviting it through your legs, inviting it especially into your whole pelvis area and the belly, literally inviting in that fire in your belly, moving it through your chest, all the way down your arms, up into your throat and your voice, and even letting that fire and that intensity come out through your eyes. And now I'm going to invite you to shift your attention from this animal part of yourself to your human self as you now gently open your eyes and engaging your throat. And for many of us, this Pele fire energy, it's like we're not used to expressing it literally through our vocal cords or letting that fire even come through our eyes. So I'm going to invite you just to gaze into my eyes right now. So we'll just do a few moments of gazing practice. So gazing at me as I'm gazing at you, giving permission for this fiery energy to be here and welcoming it, noticing if there's any discomfort that arises and just allowing that, but letting this fire intensity move through you. And now I'm going to invite you to move it into your vocal cords, making sound. And these are some of the kinds of sounds you might hear if you are in like a kickboxing class that's really inviting sound. So the sounds are like this. So just dropping into this deep part of your belly, and I'm going to invite you to make these sounds with me. And at the same time, again, like as if you're in a kickboxing class, you're going to be actually punching the air. And this is something that women don't that often do, though again, it's starting as these boxing classes are becoming more popular, but that you're letting this fire come as if you're, you can imagine that you're punching away the blocks and the limitations and the shackles that have been on you for so many lifetimes, really, as a woman. So just, again, breathing in that orange fire energy. And beginning. Again, breathing. Sometimes, as it's happening with me, there's like a cough or your throat might need to clear a little bit. And just closing your eyes again now. And just noticing what, if anything, is different in your belly, in your system. I notice I feel a lot more energized. I feel a lot more powerful. I feel grounded and in my body. You may be feeling something different. Again, if you're not used to doing this, there might be a part that feels awkward or shy, or is wondering, can someone hear you? Wanting to close the door. That's all normal and natural. But just allowing it. And again, just closing your eyes for a moment and just asking this part of yourself, how is this fire energy, this primal life force, how is it wanting to express in your life? And just listening deeply for a moment. Where does this energy want to flow in your life at this time? And just noticing what comes up. If you have a paper and pen, it's very helpful to just jot it down, make a note for later. Something to, I would invite you to take action on that and let this energy start flowing.
I've seen you do this with many different women's initiatory processes, and I know people are in for a real treat in your upcoming program when you get to go into a whole bunch of these different archetypes in a very powerful way. So I'd love for you to take us next into Kali, which is a very powerful and often misunderstood archetype as well.
Yeah, so Kali, who, as you said, is often somewhat feared, is one of the deities of the Hindu pantheon. And she is an energy that we work with a lot in our lineage. And she is an embodiment of the archetype that we call the creator-destroyer. And the creator-destroyer as an archetype is one that Kali, as I said, is an embodiment, but she is both completely inviting you to release your shackles. She is the one who says no more, and who asks you, what are those patterns that you have been carrying for lifetimes that have been chaining you down? And what are those patterns that are truly no longer serving you? And as a visual, Kali, one of the embodiments of this archetype, is often pictured with blood streaming from her mouth, and she is often standing on the shoulders of, or on the corpse of her vanquished enemy. And so for this, there's a sense that Kali is, very fierce, but also, people can feel frightened. She's, breaking all bounds, is not at all concerned about looking attractive or feminine or any of these kinds of things. Instead, Kali is really a force that is inviting us to let go, but let go in a more wild way, let go in a fierce way, and to really kind of shatter those places in our life that are no longer working, and also those places that are not in alignment with our depth and who we really are. I'm just going to invite you to just close your eyes for a moment here. And I want to invite you to imagine that you have paint on your face, and first of all, you've taken your makeup and you've literally smeared your lipstick and your eyeliner, and you're just letting your hair be wild and free. And you're imagining slathering your body with red and black paint, and imagine yourself just shredding papers, and you are just allowing this life force, this destructive life force, but this destruction that's also clearing space. It's clearing space for what's new, for what's yearning to be birthed, but there needs to be a clearing, a dropping away. So just imagine yourself shredding paper. And I often am really supported by using music, often very chaotic music, that again is just allowing us to be wild. And really the gift of Kali is also a lot about freedom. What are the again, these ways that we as women have been inside our own glass ceiling, and we are wanting to shatter that inner glass ceiling and let go of these patterns so that we can come into our fullness and our freedom and our fierceness. But there's a shedding that's required. And so just in this brief moment, just asking yourself, what needs to be shed? What needs to be let go of for me to really give my deepest gifts, and for me to show up with my fullness and why I'm really called here on this planet at this time? And just see, again, your soul talking to you. It might be something that pops up as an image or a symbol. And again, in the course, we'll have time to look at those images and those symbols. But again, what we're doing is really giving permission for this energy to flow, because so many times we are in this little cage. And so Kali is this energy of bust out of the cage and liberate yourself. So that's a brief little snapshot about Kali. That's
a great little window. And just what are some of the things that open up in your life oftentimes as a result of beginning to integrate this Kali energy?
Well, I think, many of us feel, there's these stories about, what is the baggage that you're carrying around, literally energetic baggage. And there can be like a heaviness of what's like, we're just walking around with all this. I know that when I worked with Kali, she was the archetype, one of two archetypes that I probably felt most awkward about in the beginning and somewhat frightened by, because it was so different from the kinds of energies that are normally invited by the feminine. But what I found is exactly that, a feeling of freedom, a lightness, permission to free myself from patterned ways of being that were no longer working, from relationships that were no longer working, from saying yes to things that I really wanted to be saying no to. So I felt this energy of like, it's a destructive life force energy, but it's like destroying those things that truly aren't aligned. And so actually Kali is representing this fierce love. She's a mother goddess. It's actually a motherly love that she's bringing forward, but it's in this destruction. And then there's this space, this fertile ground with all the ashes of what's been released to birth the new. And then there's this energy and this upswell that comes from all the things that have been let go of. So I actually now really enjoy working with Kali, whereas at one time I felt pretty apprehensive about it.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, let's turn our attention to Isis, coming from ancient Egypt. Isis is, we hear a little bit about Isis, but most people aren't as familiar with her as a goddess. So maybe share a little bit about what she represented and how Isis can activate new qualities in us now.
Great. Well, Isis is, again, a very powerful goddess from Egypt. I don't know if any of you have had the opportunity, like Stephen and I did, to go to some of the Isis temples. And I had a very deep feeling in being in those temples. I had a remembrance of, oh, yes, I've been here before. So I feel like part of my own soul lineage is connected to Isis. And what's very interesting, and many people probably don't even know about Isis, she's from an Egyptian goddess. She's one of the primary mother goddesses, the goddess of the sky and the heavens. She is said to be one of the most powerful of all the goddesses there. And what I love about Isis, among many other things, is she's also underlying some of even the Christian mysteries. I had the opportunity to be in deep dialogue with some of the Magdalene priestesses. And when you ask about the Magdalene lineage, before the energy of Christ and Christianity, the Magdalene priestesses, at least the ones I've had the opportunity to be in deep connection with, said that they were really Isis priestesses, that Isis was the roots that are behind all of the Mary Magdalene energies, and that ability to even walk to the edge of the earth and to the afterlife is connected with her. So there's a lot that's there, and in our lineage, Isis, we explore her as one of the embodiments of an archetype that we call the initiator. And the initiator is one of the archetypes we usually work with towards the end of our programs because, again, she's a very fierce energy and not as comfortable for many people. But really, one of the gifts of working with the initiator is getting very clear about speaking your truth to power, but practicing speaking about it with an open heart, but also in a very clear way, so that your deep truth and your wisdom can be received. And in the courses that I run, and in this course, we'll have an opportunity to work with Isis and really do some role playing, because many of us, there's these conversations that we know we need to have, places we need to show up in our truth, but we might feel afraid. That could be in the context of if we're working, it could be with a boss or a colleague, it could be with a spouse or a family member, but these kind of tricky conversations where we feel nervous and afraid. And so in the past, many of us have just remained silent or, bit our tongue, or it could be in a more public situation. How many of you have been in a room where there's something that so clearly needs to be said? There's that pink elephant in the room, but no one seems willing to speak it out loud, and you perhaps have not felt comfortable to speak it yourself. So this energy of the initiator is the one who invites you to speak, out loud in public, your truth, but also is the one that's calling yourself out. That's really inviting you to look into your own shadows of, what is still keeping you bound and what needs to come into light and into wholeness for you to really be the, as we call, full spectrum woman that you're really called to be, or the full spectrum man, if there are men who are with us today as well. So this energy, and again, it's kind of a fierce energy because it pulls no punches. It's having an open heart, but speaking what you need to say. But there's also a whole protocol for really looking at, and actually for those of you who had the chance to watch the session that I did in our Inspiring Women with Soul series, I went more into the protocols of how to know that you're really clear, noticing if you are reactive, if you have an agenda, if you're trying to, hurt with your words. There can be this tricky place where women talk about speaking our truth or speaking truth to power, but we as a vessel and as a communicator are actually not clear. And if we're not a clear vessel, then we are, if you can imagine, you're using a sword. That's the tool of the initiator. Excuse me, stirred up some of my own fire that's now clearing through my throat, which is natural as we work with these archetypes. But the sword can be used to liberate, cut away the shackles, the proverbial shackles, but it can also be used to cut off someone's arm or head. And so we need to learn how to wield that sword with wisdom and with grace and respecting. We do have a lot of power as women, and we need to use that power wisely and cleanly. And so working with this archetype and embodying this energy of Isis is helpful. Again, allowing us to go beyond what we might feel comfortable with as our own human persona and expand into something that's really aligned with the call of our day and what's really being needed in the larger collective as well as in our own life right now.
Fantastic explanation. Well, I know people are going to get a much deeper dive in your upcoming program, and so we'll talk about that in a minute. Before we get there, I want to share just a little bit more on the wildness and why, like, this whole wild woman archetype is really key to the deeper kind of love and connection with people as well.
Well, I think with all of us, when we feel most fully expressed, it's kind of like I see this image of there's many ways that especially women have been living inside of this cage of, what, as I said at the beginning, what is nice, what is appropriate, what is expected, what is the norm. And these more fiery sides, these more bold sides, these more sensual sides, these more assertive sides are often, not as celebrated in women. In fact, in our lives, when in the past, at least I've noticed, when there's women either personally or in the collective who have stepped forward with this kind of energy, they've often been, labeled in ways, labeled as, a bitch, or, excuse my language, but like a bitch or a whore or something that is really undesirable. And so what we're, or the one that you joke about, Stephen, often is this cougar energy. The cougar, the older woman who's really in her sexual power, and she's something that culturally has been not that celebrated. It's looked down upon when she's preying on the younger men, as opposed to what Stephen and I have been talking about in our personal lives. How do we reclaim that cougar energy? How do we free it up? Because as we do age, we are more spiritually and sexually mature, and we are comfortable in our bodies. And so as we allow all these fiery energies to flow, there is a sense of we get to be fully expressed. We get to be fully seen. That's so freeing, but it also frees up our love. It frees up our energy, because none of us want to be caged. When you live inside a cage, even if it's a nice, big, comfortable cage, some part of you feels like it's dying, and it's not really getting the expression that you're longing for. So as you let these sides, as you fan those sparks and let those sparks turn into flames, and again, flames can become wildfire. So there is a point to have it be contained and have it be held, but allowing like a controlled burn, you might say, so that we get to feel and get all the benefits of these fiery energies.
Awesome. Fantastic explanation. This is such a great, important subject. And I really see this as one of the keys to shifting the thousands of years of patriarchy, moving into a partnership era. I really see the empowerment of women to another level as really central to healing the world, to rebalancing politics, medicine, therapy, everything that, we've had this subtle imbalance in our world. And when we can bring it into balance, I think we can create a thriving, peaceful, and really blessed planet. And so I think the feminine fire is right at the core of what needs to ignite and be fanned in each and every woman, and frankly, every man as well. So that's why I'm super excited.
I just want to thank you and the men who are on this program today too, because I think part of the healing is really, having the men and, all beings, transgendered beings as well, but especially the men standing up and supporting this, because I think that's where part of, women are living inside of a lot of fear. If I express this energy, how will my spouse feel? That's one big fear. How will, my coworkers feel? How will my family feel? Is it allowed? And so the more that we have men and colleagues and circles of women as well that are really allowing this energy, then the more permission. It's like a green light. And because, as I said, women are such social creatures, the more it's green lighted by other women and men, then the more we can all just be free and allow this energy to flow in that figure eight dynamic way that I talked about earlier.
Amen. Beautiful. Well, let's talk more explicitly about the feminine fire empowerment now, because we're not in the business of inspiring people alone. We want to help people transform and really grow into new potentials. And so, as we said, we really see this as an essential activation, initiation for particularly women to go through right now. And I'm really glad that you've created this brand new program to help women do so. So it's called the Feminine Fire Empowerment, an archetypal initiation into your passion, power, and freedom. You can find all the details about it at femininefireempowerment.com. Again, that's femininefireempowerment.com. So it's anyone who's called to this, who's feeling in listening to this program that there's an ignition, there's a recognition that maybe things have been stagnant, that you've been stuck, you've been plateaued, that there's some greater gift that you're here to give to the world, and you haven't quite been able to figure out how to move into that. This feminine fire is a great way to free yourself up from whatever you have been, whatever has been holding you back. So, Dave, I'd love for you to share in your own words what the program is going to be delivering for folks and give a taste for the journey and the modules that'll get them there.
So really, we're following kind of the same framework that we used for this course, except we're also bringing in the energy of the Great Mother, and the reason is that for this fire energy to not become kind of explosive and wildfire, there does need to be a container, and the Great Mother energy is the symbol of the Great Mother in our lineage is the cauldron, and she's this alchemical vessel. And so opening to really feel her foundation, which each of us, as we step into these fiery energies, really need to feel that unconditional love, that support, that ground of being. And then to also know that mother is loving all of us, loving the fiery part. So we start with the Great Mother, and we'll do one module with her. And then we'll do two modules on each of these additional archetypes. So the primal goddess will spend 2 sessions. And again, a lot of the work is really experiential, as we started to do today with the Pele energy, working both with the light qualities. So for example, the light qualities of the primal goddess include vitality, passion, aliveness, some of those things we talked about. And then there's also a shadow. So the shadow of the primal goddess, there's many, but one of the primary ones is shame. And so we'll be working with both a session that's more around the light and fanning those flames. And then in the second session, we'll be working more with the shadow qualities and how do we heal what's in the way. And, it could also be parts where our creativity, our fire, our sexuality have felt shut down, and the places where it's not flowing. So that's the first, the second and the third modules with the primal goddess. Then we move into working with the creator destroyer. And again, this is where the heat really gets turned up a lot, and we'll be working specifically with the Kali archetype, the Kali energy, and in this archetype. And again, it's quite experiential. So we'll be creating some rituals together to really release rituals where you're really calling yourself out on the places where you have things that aren't working. And ultimately, it's the most loving thing you could do to yourself, but it's really looking in the mirror in a very deep way, saying, okay, what's no longer serving me? And the archetype Kali and her Kaliye Swaha, we work with mantra with each of them. So each archetype has mantras associated, mudras, which are hand positions. So like Kaliye Swaha is the mantra that we work with the creator destroyer, and this slicing mantra. And so we weave together the mantras, the mudras, and rituals within each one. and then working with the light and the shadow. So some of the light qualities are freedom, liberation, creation as well, that comes after the clearing of the dross. And then there can be the shadow. So we'll work with the shadow. The shadow, it can be like more like a chaotic energy, or this destruction that is kind of uncaring, like a cold destruction, and kind of the fallout that happens too. And so, as I said, there's always light and shadow. So we work with the light in the first session in a module, and then work with some of the shadow. And people usually feel a little apprehensive, but at the end, what's beautiful is when you create an archetypal activation, it's really about much more than happens in the session itself. It's like the session is igniting something, and we're opening up an energy field. And again, the archetypes are living in this much larger energy field. And then what's amazing is then what actually happens in people's lives. The more you choose to take it on, if you want to set up an altar as we move through each of these different archetypes, and you're consciously choosing your own light and shadow qualities, the true mystery school is in your own life. We started here, but then, you're being invited to actually, practice these practices, or do the work and live this archetype in your own life, and also see what happens in a positive way, but also you get to see the places where you still feel shut down or afraid, or where you're sloppy with it. Because we're not always, as we're learning something new, we're not always masterful. So that's, kind of what happens within the Kali. And then we move to the third archetype we're working with, which is the initiator. And similar pattern, light in the first session, more shadow in the second session. We'll be working with Isis. We also have a beautiful bonus call that you'll get to experience with, there's a bonus calls with a variety of these, but Sandra Ingerman actually is a channels Isis. And so we're going to have access to a session with her where she's actually channeling the wisdom of Isis through her lens. We'll also have access earlier to a session with Lisa Schrader, who, for those of you who know her, is an amazing Shakti teacher and Tantra teacher. And so we have a session with her as a bonus. So we're really, building in some of the wisdom of other faculty at Shift Network. There's a session that's very powerful with Jean Shinoda Bolin, who, as many of you know, works with archetypes and is one of my, she was one of the centers of my own doctoral dissertation. But the focus with the initiator archetype is really around, again, getting very clear on speaking your truth to power, role playing that, and seeing what are the things that have you afraid of standing in that more fierce part of yourself, and then healing. And there's so much healing that comes along, and that needs to be done for us to really stand in our fullness. So there's usually both. There's the healing of the wounds of the feminine, while we're also clearing the way for us to really be the most full, radiant, passionate, fiery, powerful women possible.
Awesome. Well, it's an amazing course that you've created, or empowerment, really. It's not just a course. So again, all of you who are watching right now, you see all the details at femininefirempowerment.com. Again, that's femininefirempowerment.com. A couple of things. Dave already mentioned some of the extra bonuses. So I'll just share some of the titles of those. There's a dialogue with Carolyn Mace and Andrew Harvey on the fierce feminine, the blessing of discernment. Heather Ash Amara, another Shift faculty, on warrior goddess training, claim your power, passion, and play. There's one with Sandra Ingerman on the messages from Isis, merging with the helping spirit. All of these bonuses are available right now. And there's the special one she mentioned with Lisa Schrader is available today until midnight. That's called Wielding Your Potent Shakti Power with Love, Truth, and Integrity. Lisa's particular, she was the first Tantra teacher on Oprah. She's a really great teacher of how to access the sensual and sexual and passionate side of the fire as well. So you get not only all the 8 sessions that with Devaa, and including each of these initiations, and all the bonuses. You get video recordings of every class session. There's small group breakout times. There's weekly practices and exercises you can do at home. Facebook community. You get the audio, and you even get the transcripts word for word for every class. So there's a lot of value in this program, and it really takes you from this place of feeling kind of like plateaued or stuck or not passionate about life or not speaking your truth to really being more fully empowered to stand in your power, stand in your truth, to access more life force, to have more sensuality, to speak more truth. It's really can be quite a dramatic shift when you really inhabit these energies. So the course begins on April 4th, and it's going to run on Wednesdays at 5 Pacific time. I say even if you can't make the live time, you can still get the full value from the recordings and the transcripts and participating in the live community. So I encourage you to go for it, even if you're not available at 5 Pacific time on Wednesdays. So it's a lot of value that we provided in this program, and we've kept it very accessible. It's just 3 payments of $109, or you save 10% at $297 when you pay in full. So I encourage you to go to femininefireempowerment.com, give it a read through, and also to really check out this extra bonus today, because if you tune in and you're getting the sense you want to move forward with this, you feel the electricity and the excitement that's starting to build, then you get the extra bonus with Lisa Schrader when you sign up today by midnight. And that's wielding your potent Shakti power with love, truth, and integrity. So, Devaa, we're just nearing the end of our time. Anything else you want to share from your heart with the women and perhaps the men who are thinking about joining you in this next stage of the journey?
I just want to invite people again to just just close your eyes for a moment and just drop back into this belly. And part of the gift of the primal goddess that we are working with Pele today is about listening to your body wisdom. So just listening to the wisdom of your body about this course. If you are feeling called and it's a yes, your body will often feel a bit more open. You might have even an image that comes up. So just listening to your body at the deepest level. Is this right for you? Is this a yes? And if it is, I invite you to join us, and I'm so excited to be working with you in these energies. And if it is, I invite you to do it today so you can have that great session with Lisa. You really will want to have access to it because it's such a powerful teaching that she's sharing. And then also notice in your being if it feels like a no. And if this is not the right timing or not the right thing for you, then also welcome that and notice that. And notice what would it take to become a yes in the future where you are really ready to work with these energies on a deeper level. So whatever you choose, I hope you join us, but I'm really excited to join with those of you saying yes, and the journey ahead is definitely going to be very, very powerful.
Great. Well, what I'll say on my side is that we always have incredible testimonials from women who go through Devaa's programs. She is a master facilitator, priestess, trainer, initiator, particularly of women, and really creates a very safe space for people to be honest and real and open and deepen together. So it's a very rich, connective, global community that forms around her work. So again, you can find all the details about the Feminine Fire Empowerment at femininefireempowerment.com. Again, that's femininefireempowerment.com. Starts on April 4th, and when you sign up by midnight tonight, you get the extra bonus with Lisa Schrader on wielding your potent Shakti power with love, truth, and integrity. So if you choose to join, you're in for a treat. I know that you will come out much freer, much bolder, much more intimate with your full life force and more able to live that with passion and higher purpose in the world. So thank you all for joining, and thank you, Devaa, for a beautiful and really dynamic hour.
Thanks, everyone. I hope to see many of you in the program.
Great. Thanks so much. And again, femininefireempowerment.com to read more and sign up. Bye-bye.